Hello, everybody. Just getting things put together here, and while we wait for people to come in, let's take a couple of videos here.
This is what we have here, everyone. Let me read it to you. The Democratic Coalition of Satan Worshippers thanks Governor Tim Walz for not standing in the way of spreading Satanism in the state capitol building. Satan has a special place for you.
While Christians are being slaughtered worldwide, over 4,800 martyred for their faith in the latest reporting period alone, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa's jihadist killing fields, not to mention the slaughtered Zoroastrians taking place in Iran. Don Lemon's stochastic terror rants, fueling the growing anti-Christian narrative, slide right on by in the land of the First Amendment, unchallenged by our Soros-embedded so-called justice system.
There's nothing in the Constitution that tells you what time you can protest. You can protest at any time. That's the whole point of it, is to disrupt, to make uncomfortable.
I think this DOJ, via Pam Bondi, who wears her crucifix, who will not ever address anybody's suffering, they have a problem with those types of white people being confronted and called out on their hypocrisy.
And there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are, in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice, but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy, a white supremacy.
I have preached for many years that there will come a time when we'll find out who are Christians by label and by convenience, and who are Christians by conviction. And certainly we're entering those days now. I believe we should pray for this congregation, and we should be vigilant as Christians to exercise our freedom, to worship our Savior, and to stand unashamed for the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Now the Eighth Circuit just unsealed those filings on arrest warrants tied to church invasions, where the judge's concurrence lays it bare. In this corrupted America, tainted Article 3 benches and Democrat urban jury pools stacked with Bolshevik sympathizers guarantee these church-disrupting, service-interrupting, child-frightening radicals will never face real justice.
The hypocrisy here is thick, and I would say that what we have here is a situation where rights were violated. Those rights need to be protected, and there is a law here that can be accessed to ensure those protections.
That's the nightmare we're living right now. This judge apparently sees storming a sanctuary, shattering worship, and terrorizing little kids as no big deal, not even illegal. But does the court of public opinion agree with what court filings revealed was said and done by the protesters? Quote, "Your parents are Nazis," end quote, was yelled directly in the faces of children while accusing parents of being Nazis who would burn in hell. Quote, "This ain't God's house. This is the house of the devil," end quote, was shouted by protester William Kelly. Accusations that the church was, quote, "harboring killers," end quote, directed at the congregation. In the chaos, some protesters reportedly shouted, quote, "shoot," end quote, amid fears of guns, contributing to panic that felt like a, quote, "mass shooting," end quote, to one victim, as stairs were blocked to prevent parents from reaching Sunday school children. And now the DOJ has withdrawn its request for those 5 arrest warrants, including Don Lemon, following the appellate rejection.
What you witnessed Don Lemon do is churches, they target white churches because white churches are being told you got to be friendly and nice. You just got to look past it and just love them. Love them. I love mine. Let me love your hands, oh Lord. Let me love your throat as I pray for you.
Amen. Don Lemon, don't come here. You roll up in this church doing stuff like that, and it's going to be the Royal Rumble.
Fake news magas are losing their mind over something that's not even true.
I'm trying to understand, what is it exactly that you are doing, and what is it exactly that you want us to think that you're doing? You are opposition to any and everything that is successful in this country. Anything that is trying to get this country together, you are in direct opposition
opposition off.
Americans are left twisting in the wind, struggling with the constant question, where do we go from here? John Bound reporting for InfoWars.
So let me know what you think. It looks like all the charges were dropped against the people that stormed the church, including Don Lemon. I don't think anybody thought Don Lemon was going to be arrested for breaking into that church anyway. But it seems just like everything else, there's just one set of rules for one group of people and another set of rules for another. It's really sad.
Don't be engulfed by the smokescreen of the ongoing ICE raids and the anti-ICE protests.
This is not just about resistance here in Minneapolis. It's about love. So you've got people uniting and coming together in this beautiful way.
After the shooting of Renee Good, the coverage of ICE on CBS, NBC, and ABC was 93% negative.
So you have Frey, who's saying they were coming together in a peaceful, loving way, which is obviously a lie. And then you see here an independent news source, their study looking at the border enforcement with 93% negative coverage. And I've watched the news and I've watched these reports myself and can confirm that everything is negative. So what it does is it stirs the pot, gets people angry based on lies. And once again, here we are when people have voted for Trump to deport these people. This is a way of stopping him from doing it based on lies.
93% negative is not journalism, it's tribalism.
Let's keep our eye on the ball.
How high up do you think the message went that there was fraud? Do you think it made its way to the governor's office?
I struggle to believe it didn't. I have to believe that the governor's office and Keith Ellison's office were aware of this. They've said they were involved in helping the FBI. They've said they were made aware.
Mr. Dexter, could have something been done about this earlier?
Yes. As I stated in my opening testimony, in the years that I worked there, we identified how fraud was occurring, the loopholes that existed, and we.
What were some of the warning signs, Mr. Dexter?
Well, the fact that part of our job was to go and collect attendance records. We would find attendance records that were either incomplete, non-existent.
But I can't understate it.
So, and then the thing too is they made it pretty obvious when Nick Shirley went out and did his investigative reporting. Here's a kid with a camera, a cheap camera and a microphone going around and exposing this stuff. You can't tell me that because none of this stuff was enforced before, that all of a sudden now it's this huge story. This has probably been going on for maybe decades now, that Waltz and Frey and Ellison weren't involved in this or didn't know about it. And what I was saying yesterday in my live stream yesterday is that this is the new organized crime. This is the new mafia. So we got Rudy Giuliani dealt with the mafia in New York, and we had the Italian mob in Chicago, New York, and other places. Now this is the new organized crime. This is the new thing. But now you have, and this has always been a fear of mine for a very long time, where it's bad enough you have independent groups of people committing crimes or in an organized way. But then when you have a number of politicians, and you can make the argument on both sides, that politicians are involved in corrupt behavior, then at that point you no longer have a country. It's just completely destroyed. So, and it's really a shame. Those of you that are in here, please do me a huge favor. Subscribe. If you like this content, if you like what you see so far, I have also pinned in the comment section the link to become a member. It's only 99 cents. The perks for that membership is when you comment, I will read your comment. Your comment takes precedence over everybody else. And then I will also do private live streams for those members only on weekends. So it's only 99 cents.
How frustrated Minnesotans are right now with the level of fraud and the lack of accountability. Assistant Commissioner Moore said that through the SWIFT system, through your accounting system, you know who you're paying. You know the people who you are sending money to. You know their name, you know their business. Frankly, you probably know who they're connected to. And through the tools across state agencies and across all of the executive branch, from business registrations to what they have to file with the Attorney General's office, all of those tools exist. So why are payments continuing to people who have been convicted of fraud?
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey's inner circle has been riddled with explosive ties to one of the biggest fraud heists in American history, the $250 million Feeding Our Future scam.
A brazen scheme of staggering proportions.
The largest pandemic fraud in the United States.
The subjects in this case weren't interested in feeding our future. They were interested in feeding their own gluttony.
We have new details on a jury tampering scheme at the center of a major fraud case. Federal prosecutors indicted 5 people for their roles in offering a juror $120,000 for a not guilty verdict in the feeding.
I mean, it's just one thing after another. And nothing's been done about it for years. I mean, how can you, I was watching something today where apparently Antifa, because there's plenty of people yesterday saying that Antifa does not exist. But there is someone who, she does basically studies this stuff in communism for a living. And she said that Minnesota is the breeding ground for Antifa, which I didn't know that. And that's why in this particular case, it's so prevalent and there's so much violence and there's so much going on, because that really is the birthplace of this type of radical behavior, according to her.
Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. The U.S. attorney says the group targeted juror 52.
That's a problem, Robert, is that no one is held accountable. And at this point, I don't know what's going to happen with Waltz and Frey. Are they going to be investigated? I mean, you just saw, I just played the thing about the church. All the charges apparently were dropped against everybody that went into the church. So until you actually see people going to jail and it's a big news thing, then this stuff is going to continue. And at this point, the way Trump is handling things, I don't see, in Pam Bondi and the Justice Department, I don't see anything happening. So you just watch this in disbelief. And it's really sad that and Trump's not doing anything right now with all of the violence against the federal agents either. So you just shrug, all you can do is just shrug your shoulders and go, what? Okay, I guess this is just going to keep happening.
Because she was the youngest juror and appeared to be the only juror of color.
3 of Frey's own appointees got nailed. Former senior policy aide Abdi Nur Salah pleaded guilty to wire fraud. Shamarke Issa, twice handpicked to chair the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, copped to wire fraud and restitution in the millions. Abdik Kadir Ainanche Muhammad, tapped for Frey's Community Safety Work Group, faced indictments in the same rotten scheme. Add in campaign max donations from at least 8 indicted players, plus Frey's own wife, Sarah Clark, lobbying at the firm that shielded Feeding Our Future itself. And you've got a tangled web of proximity, appointments, and unanswered questions screaming conflict and cover.
Look, the fraud's real. We've all got to acknowledge it. The fraud is very real. And by the way, when somebody commits fraud, and there are many that have done that, you investigate it. you charge, you prosecute, and yeah, you put the person in jail. As an individual, you put the person in jail as an individual. You do not hold an entire community, any community.
Mayor Jacob Frey, does anybody think that he's guilty? Do you think he's in on it? I'm curious, chat. What do you think? Do you think that Jacob Frey, I'll do a poll right now. Is Jacob Frey in on this? I'd say yes. Is Jacob Frey in on the scam? Yes or no? Let's see what everybody thinks in the chat, because I know a lot of people in here don't want to chat, which is fine, but voting is anonymous.
Accountable for the actions of individuals.
Fry claims ignorance and distances himself. But how long can the distraction go on for this city under siege by its own local and state government?
Who are the funders, the orchestrators, the facilitators of these riots and these efforts to impede lawful enforcement?
By the way, another question, and I believe most people are going to say that, yes, he's in on it. But wait till all the freaks and the trolls start coming in later. But what about Tim Walz? Do you think he's in on it? I believe that he's in on it too. If Tim Walz wasn't guilty, he wouldn't have pulled out of the re-election campaign, the gubernatorial re-election campaign. So I believe that he did that ultimately because he's under pressure, and he was in on it too. But the other thing too is that now we hear that the FBI has the NGOs, the people who are organizing these protests, that they are paid for. And I will show you video that shows how organized it is, that it's pretty damn organized and well put together. You got to hand it to them. And so, but the FBI is also saying that they're figuring out, or they have the names of the people that are organizing these, and they're not organic, which I think most of us with any common sense would understand that or know that.
John Bound reporting for InfoWars.
So here's let's see what Ron DeSantis says about Florida and having, and again, what I had said before, Minnesota is one of those states where this stuff kind of was born. But Laura Ingraham had a conversation with Ron DeSantis about the state of Florida, which I have not watched yet. I think it'll be pretty interesting.
Here with us with his take is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Governor, we certainly are not seeing chaos in Florida as we've seen in places like Minneapolis. So what is the difference?
Well, when President Trump got elected, it was clear he got elected on two main issues, as you mentioned, the economy and the border, and not only stopping the invasion that occurred under Biden, but then removing the people who were here illegally. And so I called a special session of the Florida legislature, and we imposed a legal requirement on all state and local law enforcement agencies to participate with DHS in interior immigration enforcement operations. And the result of that has now been, between state and local, we've done 20,000 apprehensions of illegal aliens, and that's in addition to what ICE is doing on its own. And you do have a very, very cohesive set of forces, and we're all on the same page. And here's the thing. The reason why I imposed that requirement, we have some sheriffs that would be gung-ho to do this. We've got some cities, some mayors would not want to do it, right? But since we did the requirement, if you act like Jacob Frey in Florida, then you get removed from your position. And so we have consequences to that duty, and it's worked very well. And it's important. The American people voted for this. This is something that has to be a...
Yeah, and this is something that somebody like Ron DeSantis probably would have removed Jacob Frey or however you pronounce it, if this was going on in the state of Florida. But of course, like I think most people would agree, we're at 77% agree that Frey's in on it and most likely Waltz. So of course they're not going to turn on each other, at least for now, unless they get brought up on charges and maybe one will rat out the other. We'll see, but I don't see anything happening.
Accomplish, and if it can't be accomplished with President Trump's presidency, then are we ever going to be able to get it done?
Well, and Governor, the upshot of what Minnesota, at least the Twin Cities area, they wanted to do was to exempt themselves from federal law. I mean, what if Florida or Texas voters, Tennessee voters just decided they just didn't want to pay income tax? They wanted to opt out of the enforcement, the IRS enforcement. I mean, people would laugh at them. You can't do that. It's federal supremacy, federal law. And the same situation here.
I think they're going even one step further than that, though. Yes, they do not want to participate. You will literally have a criminal alien sitting in jail in Minnesota for violating their own laws, and they still don't want to cooperate and send that person to DHS so that they can be removed. But what you see on the streets, that's an orchestrated effort. These are groups that are funded. It's being egged on by politicians like the governor and the mayor. And their goal is not to just simply not enforce the law, but to actively sabotage the enforcement of the law. And so I think that's why that just cannot stand. If you can have a state, because they have different political orientation, just opt themselves out and indeed sabotage what's being done to bring about the mandate that the voters gave, then what are we even doing here? And so I think what they're doing has been very, very damaging.
Are you surprised that people like Bill Cassidy and Tom Tillis and some others in the Republican Party are like using this moment clearly to kind of pile on here when they know that everyone thinks these deaths are tragedies. They know generally, what's going on, but they use this moment to dump on ICE.
Well, here's the thing, Laura. Look, in these individual instances, which are tragic, we should insist on high standards for these officers, and they should do a review. And if there's something if they need to be held accountable, they should do it. But understand what they're facing. They're facing threats. People are going after their families just for enforcing the law. They have people that are trying to frustrate their core functions of law enforcement. That's not something that a typical police officer would have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so the environment that DHS and ICE is having to operate in is unlike anything we've seen in recent times. There's massive hostility being directed at them, and not just in terms of, you're protesting, but you're doing things that are putting their lives in danger. So it's a difficult assignment, and I just think you should have some sympathy for what they're having to deal with, even if you want to insist on the accountability, which we should do as well.
Well, President Trump already, I'm just making the point. The Republicans shoot themselves in the foot, okay? This is what they do. So they have a winning issue, and then they they dump on ICE, and as if this job is difficult. It's so difficult that California Congressman Eric Swalwell, who wants to be California's next governor, revealed his plans for what he wants to happen to these agents. Watch this, Governor.
Governors have immense powers, and I have said that when I'm governor of California, if you wear a mask in California, you're losing your driver's license. If you have worked for ICE in the past, you are unhired.
Funny thing is now Swallowswell was dating a Chinese spy and still is in Congress. Now he's saying that he wants to have people arrest, and he's not the only one who said this, wants to arrest people who are wearing masks, yet he's the same guy who told everybody to wear a mask during COVID, and you would be arrested if you didn't wear a mask. Turns out the masks didn't do anything to stop the spread of COVID, but this guy threatened people who refused to wear a mask, and now all of a sudden he's flip-flopping on the mask wearing. But the biggest thing is how this guy dated a Chinese spy and he's still in Congress. Hasn't been held accountable. Fang, anybody remember that?
Hireable in our state. That law enforcement will prosecute you for kidnapping, battery, assault, murder on the people in our communities.
What is that, Governor? Now you can't work apparently for the federal government, except in jobs that are duplicative or unnecessary.
Well, it's quite a change for California to say if they wear a mask, then they're going to be have consequences, because they were imposing consequences on people in COVID for not wearing a mask. They were going after people doing all sorts of normal things.
Great minds think alike.
During that time. So it's a very screwy thing. But he does not have the authority to do that. Federal law, I mean, look, could a conservative state do that to IRS agents like you suggested? Of course, that's just not the way this operates.
When you see what's coming down the road over the next 10 months or so, right before the midterms, what do you see as the greatest challenges for the Republican Party? There's some discontent out there, consumer confidence. I'm going to get into that next segment. But it's a little low right now. Trump wants to raise it. You had the Miami mayoral election, didn't go the way the Republicans wanted. But where do you see things?
Well, first, there's just a typical midterm dynamic. This is not unique to President Trump. When you have a president of one party, the voters in the other party get motivated to vote in the midterms because they're not happy. The voters of that president's party tend to be happier and more complacent. And I think we have an additional challenge given our current coalition, because a lot of that is specific to President Trump himself. These voters will vote for Republicans when the president's on the ballot. But if he's not on the ballot, I'm not sure that all of them are going to be willing to come out and actually vote. Then you also do have the backdrop where this is just true.
So for those who are saying that there's a difference between the masks for COVID and the mask that ICE is wearing because ICE is concealing their identities. ICE has to conceal their identities because leftist, crazy, lunatic psychos are doxing them. So that's why they have to do what they're doing. So to say that they're hiding their identities, why do you even care what their identities are? I mean, they're federal agents doing their job. So the question is, why do you even care? That's just a ridiculous argument. Of course, it's a ridiculous argument because it comes from maniacs.
There is dissatisfaction amongst base voters in some of the views and what productivity of Congress. I think they think that there should be more aggressiveness, and I think that they want to see some of that. And so I do see some of that as well. So those are just factors that are out there that makes it more difficult than it would be when you have the wind at your back, like in 2024 or 2016.
Yeah, great point, Todd. The protesters are also wearing masks to hide their identities, so that's okay. I love how one isn't allowed to hide their identity, but the other is. That's funny. That's funny to me. My opinion on the midterms is that if Trump doesn't do something and stop the terrorists that are attacking ICE physically and verbally, and then arrest and try to the fullest extent of the law those that are funding the protests, because they're obviously funded. Everybody knows that. It's not in dispute. Then he's going to end up having a real problem, because I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to have his base. And like I said, I'm not a MAGA guy. I think they're all one uniparty, quite honestly. But I think he's going to have a real problem in the midterms. And it's going to be his own fault because they're not cracking down on the thuggery that's going on in Minnesota. And I don't know why I don't know why he's not cracking down on it. I have no idea why. It's just very, very strange and odd to me that he hasn't put out the Insurrection Act and he's not sending the military in there to do so. I'm hoping that he will, but so far they haven't done anything.
Well, what should they do when Obama was president?
Well, what should they do? Those are the typical things, but what should Republicans do? President Trump's trying to carry the whole party on his back.
So in Congress, draw a sharp contrast with the left on immigration. No, for example, Laura, we're talking about interior enforcement. It's important. I've done a lot in Florida for it. But why not go after the remittances? Why not reduce some of the carrots that people are coming illegally? Why not do employment verification? Why not defund sanctuary cities? These are things that our voters would support 80%, and yet you don't see that being done. So I think if they go bold, if they make the Democrats vote against these really important, popular, conservative things, our voters will get a little bit more energized. I do think that would happen.
Do you think we should get rid of the filibuster?
I think the question is if you do that, what are you going to actually pass? And what I would hate to see is that happen, the Republicans still not pass anything, and then the Democrats come in and make D.C. a state and do all those other things. And so that's the thing. They haven't really coalesced around a very big, bold, conservative agenda. So the only way I would consider that is if they had 4 or 5 really transformative conservative things that were ready to go that they can do. I just haven't seen that yet.
All right, Governor, always great to see you. Thank you very much.
Now, to show, too, the craziness on the left, and they'll say that ICE is murdering people, which is obviously a ridiculous argument. But here's an actual nurse. This is from Libs of TikTok. And listen to what she has to say of what she wants to do to ICE agents. Now, she's an actual nurse.
I thought of something good. I think it's something in the weird spot. Sabotage tactic, or at least scare tactic. All the medical providers, grab some syringes with needles on the end. Have them full of saline or succinylcholine, whatever. That will probably be a deterrent. Be safe. Okay, for today's resistance tip, I vote, anybody got any poison ivy, poison oak in their yard? Get some of that up with gloves, obviously. Get it in some water, like a gallon of water. Get the poison ivy oak water, and I'm gonna put it into a water gun. Aim for faces, hands. All right, the single ladies where these ICE guys are going have a chance to do something, not without risk, but could help the cause for sure. Get on Tinder, get on Hinge, find these guys. They're around. They're an ICE agent, bring some X-Lax and put it in their drinks. Get them sick. Nobody's gonna die. Just enough to incapacitate them, get them off the street for the next day. Highly, easily deniable. You could get sick too. Won't eat there again. I'm just saying, let's get them where they eat. Somebody's not going to be supporting these guys. Where's the hotel where they eat? Who makes that breakfast? Let's find them. Let's make their lives fucking miserable. I know we're already trying to keep them awake all night. That's good. Anything you can do to make the living conditions bad. Talk to the people who work at the places where they are. We'll get some ideas.
All right, guys. Then if there's going to be threats or anything in here, where it's just automatic removal. So, in the chat, I'm not going to tolerate that kind of shit. Don't do it. No threats, none of that stuff. So now you're making me have to stop and deal with this. And I will talk in a second here once I get dealing with this Melinda chick and what's happened to her. She is on leave, actually. Bear with me, guys, for a second, because if I see it again, I'll keep it just, Yeah, the threats are not. We're not doing that. Not doing it. So let's see what happened. And once again, let me repeat to everyone: I'm not going to tolerate. If you guys have a disagreement, that's fine. It's not a problem. I don't have an issue with that. But you start getting into like the violent threats and all that kind of stuff, like tell me where you live, all that trash. We're not running that kind of thing. It's not right. It's not. We don't need it. So so you can say whatever you want about ICE in a way that you disagree and all that kind of stuff, but the vitriol, violent talk, and all that kind of stuff, we're not doing it. So this woman apparently was put on leave. So VCU Health is the place, and obviously this is somebody who needs to be removed because that's another, for her, saying that is a direct threat to life. These are patients you're talking about, and to say those types of things, to basically say it's okay to murder someone, and you're in the healthcare industry, that person needs to be arrested and dealt with right away. Be put on administrative leave. I certainly hope it leads to firing. I mean, I don't think anyone would dispute by making those types of comments that you would absolutely need to lose your job for doing something like that, and very, very much be put in jail for that. So I don't know what's going to happen. I will have an update tomorrow. And somebody brought up a question: how are people this? I think they said, how are they this intelligent or so dumb and be so successful? I don't understand that either. It's a really good question. Why is it, or how is it that people like this that are in that? Because you can't be a dummy and be a nurse. I mean, maybe there's such a terrible shortage of nurses now that they're taking anybody and everybody. And we do have a mental health crisis in this country. There's no doubt about that. But to have somebody in that position and say those types of things, once again, it's like, why are you that? Are you that brainwashed by what's going on and what you're being told? And again, that news study where you have 90+% negative reporting on what's going on, and so I think we have first of all, we have a real serious mental health crisis in the country, and that needs to be dealt with. But, this is unacceptable to have somebody like this as a nurse making those comments. Now, to show that there's some serious funding going on here, there's this video that was taken by someone who was watching someone in a pickup truck from U-Haul handing out,
Look at this. Here goes
very well-made signs.
Group of professional activists renting a U-Haul, getting signs out of their trucks. This is not organic. These are the same printed signs, and now they're heading to the federal courthouse.
What do we want? When do we want it?
Do you know who's organizing this?
The PSL, Party for Socialism.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to sign?
I'm just going to observe. Thank you, though.
Tuck in, meet your neighbors, because again, hey, remember, we're not doing this by ourselves, right?
Which group is organizing this?
Party for Socialism and Liberation. We've been out here for a few years.
So there you go. They're admitting who the companies are, or the NGOs or the organizations that are funding it.
How do you join? Like, if you want to also donate?
It's pretty easy. You can look it up, pslweb.org.
Got it. Is there like a Minnesota or Minneapolis chapter?
Twin Cities.
By ourselves, right?
Which group is organizing this?
Party for Socialism and Liberation. We've been out here for a few years.
Party for Socialism. So it's a socialism party. So you don't think that socialism, Maoism, communism, Leninism is part of this? This is what we're dealing with. This is the the dynamics of it is that you're dealing with you're really dealing with Maoism, Leninism, the violent Soviet Marxism is really what you're dealing with.
How do you join? Like, if you want to also donate?
It's pretty easy. You can look it up, psoweb.org.
Got it. Is there like a Minnesota or Minneapolis chapter?
Twin Cities.
Twin Cities. So, okay. So people can simply just donate and goes to signs and whatever out here to protest. Okay.
If we don't get it, if we don't get it.
Here's what Tim Walz wants to do to J.D. Vance.
I would beat the shit out of him now if I could, and I would call that out. I would beat the shit out of him now if I could, and I would call that out. I mean, that's just different. In verbally going at it, my argument is much better. In making the case that housing prices are up because of immigration and that we should build on federal lands, it was such a crazy thing. But then when I watched him, I got sucked into that. And if you remember, this was right in that moment of eating dogs and cats. I took that bait and thought that that was the argument of how outrageous it was. That was not the argument.
And he said that your cops are liars. He said that the
no,
ICE agents aren't.
They all did. That's exactly right, that this is the problem with them. And, well, the president said it, that we told them to stand down. Do you think they would do that? Do you think that police would not protect citizens, no matter if I'm like, oh, don't do this? But yes. Well, this is the whole paradox with these guys.
So there you go, Tampon Tim threatening to beat the shit out of J.D. Vance, which is absolutely hilarious. So our poll is at 79% believe that Jacob Frey's in on the scam. So we'll go ahead and end that one. I think that one's 167 votes. Thanks for voting on that one. If anybody has an idea for a new one, let me know. Tom Homan was now put in charge. We'll have to see what ends up happening. I think they threw some people under the bus related to what's going on. A huge mistake, but we'll see what Tom Homan is going to do, but hopefully fix the situation. But let's see what he has to say.
This job and these people who want to say follow ICE, and film ICE, you know what? You can protest. They have that right. But when you cross that line, and we've proven it, if you interfere or impede or assault an ICE officer, you will be prosecuted. And one thing I'm pushing for right now, Laura, we're going to create a database where those people that are arrested for interference, impediment, assault, we're going to make them famous. We're going to put their face on TV. We're going to let their employers in their neighborhoods, in their schools, know who these people are. Because as you said, a lot of these people, they say they're taking time off work to protest. I bet you a lot of them are calling in sick. I bet you a lot of their employers don't know what they're doing. But we're going to make sure everybody knows who they are. We're going to broadcast. They want to broadcast the ICE officer that was nearly killed all over the internet. We're going to broadcast every one of these people we arrest.
And that's starting to happen now, which is good. But I don't know if you guys saw the video of
Steve Harrigan is in Minneapolis again tonight.
ICE
violent protests overnight at a hotel that demonstrators said ICE agents were staying at. They tried to smash through the glass doors to get into the hotel. Police tried to use vending machines to block them. Federal agents arrived and used tear gas to disperse the crowd. In the end, 2 were detained, but then released. Just one example of the protests we are seeing here, some violent, some peaceful. Several thousand protesters marched yesterday, with more today at the state capitol. When you get outside the city of Minneapolis, what you hear is widespread dissatisfaction. Some frustrated with the ICE agents' tactics, others frustrated with the protesters.
I think what ICE is doing is good, but you also need to make sure you do it the right way.
There's going to be protesters that take it too far, but at the end of the day, they want ICE out of their community.
Minnesota officials were in federal court today asking a judge for a temporary restraining order to stop the immigration operation. The Department of Homeland Security rejected the move as baseless. A decision is expected in the coming days. Immediately after the death of 37-year-old Alex Preddy, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was comparing the actions of the federal agents here, once again, to Nazi Germany. The Holocaust Museum called that deeply offensive.
We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota.
Homeland Security has confirmed to Fox News that multiple agents had their body cameras on at the time of the shooting. That footage is now being reviewed. Brett?
And Steve, we're learning that authorities have arrested another person in connection to that incident where a mob stole some weapons and destroyed an FBI vehicle.
You guys remember that? In the chat, do you guys remember the FBI vehicles that were broken into? And one of the people who broke into that vehicle stole a long gun. Let me know if you guys remember that or not.
That's right. Multiple FBI vehicles really stormed, trashed, and looted 2 weeks ago. A second arrest now. The FBI also adding that someone arrested actually used something from that FBI vehicle, most likely a weapon, to threaten an FBI agent, his wife, and his child. Brett?
There you go. This is
Okay,
what you're
we'll follow
dealing
that,
with.
Steve, thanks.
This is what you're dealing with. Several of the agitators arrested outside a Minnesota hotel where they believed Border Patrol Commander Gregory
In the last
Bonvino
2 years,
was
Minnesota
staying,
has released 8
have criminal records, with one arrestee openly embracing a disrupt, disturb, resist slogan on Instagram. The agitators were outside the Spring Hill Suites by Marriott in Maple Grove, Minnesota on Monday night, where they had thought Bovino was staying. Arrests were made after authorities said the demonstrations were no longer considered peaceful and declared it an unlawful assembly. So these people that were arrested, that were destroying the hotel, did have criminal records, many of them. So again, how much more do you need? Now, this is a DA, district attorney in Philadelphia. Listen to this guy.
This is a small bunch of wannabe Nazis. That's what they are. In a country of 350 million, we outnumber them. If we have to hunt you down the way they hunted down Nazis for decades, we will find your identities. We will find you. We will achieve justice. And
you probably might go to jail.
I'm going to go to
So there you go. And well, huge thing that I saw that I definitely wanted to play. This is, before you lose hope, at least, and because when you see the trolls and you see the people that are for the violence and against ICE and everything else, this is from CNN. CNN's video is showing really what's going on in America and what people are actually thinking, the real numbers.
Yeah, sometimes I like blunt questions because they sort of get at the underlying feelings that people have. So this is about as blunt a question as you can get. Deport all immigrants here illegally. I will note the ABC News poll asked about undocumented immigrants. So we have slightly different questions, but these were all taken within the last month. And there's real uniformity here. That's what I really think you see. You see real uniformity. Deport all immigrants who are here illegally. 55% of the New York Times. Marquette, 64%. CBS News, 57%. ABC News with a slightly different question, 56%. So what you're seeing essentially here is a very clear indication that a majority of Americans, in fact, when they're asked this blunt question, which I believe gets at the underlying feelings, do in fact want to deport all immigrants who are here illegally. There's no arguing with these different numbers because...
Okay, so what they're saying is all illegal immigrants, not just the ones committing violence after they've already broken the law by coming in here illegally. The people who are here, period, have broken the law by being here. Most Americans want every single one deported.
They're all essentially the same across 4 different pollsters. Feelings towards immigration.
Who would have thought for a second that CNN would put something like this on? It's stunning.
In this country, feelings towards undocumented immigrants and deporting all of them have become considerably more hawkish. And I think that gives Donald Trump much more leverage to go with the American people and sort of have these hawkish, some might say harsh, different rhetoric and also issue-based sort of going after immigrants who are here illegally, want immigration levels decreased. This includes legal and illegal immigration. Look at this. Last year, 55%. That is the highest level since the 9/11 aftermath. You go back just to 2020.
And this, again, legal and illegal. So people want less people coming into the country.
Exactly. They want less people coming into the country. Look at that. That's a 14-point rise from 2023. You go back to 2016 when Donald Trump again was running for president the first time, it was 38%. That's a 17-point rise. So the bottom line is more folks want people who are here illegally deported, and their overall feelings towards immigration have become considerably more hawkish.
63% say they're okay with deporting immigrants who are here illegally and arrived in the last 4 years. 87% are good with deporting immigrants who are here illegally and have criminal records.
So there you go. Even CNN is now finally having to tell the truth. All right, real quick, one more video, and then we'll call it a day. I appreciate everybody being here. If you like the content and you're here, please subscribe. If you do, you will be notified when I go live again, which is typically every afternoon on weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. If you do become a member, that's only 99 cents. You will get a badge by your name. I will read your comment out loud. And I will do live streams for members only on weekends. So please consider being a member for only 99 cents. It's a drop in the bucket. It's nothing. If you want more content like this, and it's a much more kind of calm when it comes to the chat, because we had 15,000 people come through in and out over the past hour. So let's go with one more deal on the shooting itself from Preddy. This is a lawyer who is a self-defense lawyer who was actually sworn into the Supreme Court of the United States Bar. So he really knows his stuff. And let's listen to what he has to say.
This is his hand coming out from the 4 o'clock position by his waistband, which is where his holster was. The 4 o'clock position. You understand what I'm talking about, right? The right hip, just behind, right hip would be 3 o'clock. Just behind the right hip is 4 o'clock. A common place to carry concealed. Less common now, actually. That when I carried a 1911 for 25 years, a full-size 5-inch 1911, that's where I carried it. The 4 o'clock position. Now it's, I think the most popular way of concealed carry now is probably appendix, right? Appendix in the waistband. But in any case, that's where he was carrying his gun. And now his hand is coming from that location. Remember, not every officer is seeing the same things, right? Some of what's happening is blocked from their vision. There are intervening bodies. Like the officer who's pointing a gun at the back of Alex Preddy here can't see what's in front of Alex Preddy. He can't see the front of Alex's body.
Thanks,
right?
Jeff.
So if an officer can't see Alex Preddy's hand, and then the hand swings into view with an object in it, and the officer's already got this felony suspect, non-compliant, gun, suspect at gunpoint, what is the reasonably foreseeable outcome other than a shot being fired? And when a bunch of cops have their guns out and one shot goes off, what's the reasonably foreseeable outcome other than sympathetic discharge by the other officers, relying on the judgment of the first officer who fired? Roger Wood, $5. Disagree on the object being a phone when shot. The object looks consistent with a 21-round magazine. It could be. It could be. I'm not swearing on that. It doesn't really matter, of course. It doesn't matter what it is. It's an object that in the microsecond of attention that an officer can give it after hearing gun, is going to lead a reasonable officer to conclude that a weapon's being brought into play by this non-compliant, felonious suspect they're trying to arrest. Remember, a reasonable perception of an imminent, unlawful, deadly force threat does not need to be correct. We're not required to make perfect decisions in self-defense. We're only required to make reasonable decisions, and reasoned here.
And that's the biggest argument that people are I guess, are struggling to understand, is that people want to analyze this shooting, and it's unfortunate that it happened, of course. But people are saying, oh, well, they're armchair quarterbacking all this stuff. And what the people, the lawyers, the law enforcement officers, the experts are saying is that it is clean. And clean from the standpoint of, these guys, if they have a reasonable expectation of getting shot or killed, that they can defend themselves. And once again, this is a guy who is sworn into the bar of the United States Supreme Court. This guy can argue in front of the Supreme Court, probably one of the best lawyers there is. So you don't have to like it, but it's the law.
Means applying the powers of reason to evidence. It doesn't mean the correct decision. It doesn't mean the optimal decision. It doesn't mean the best decision. It just means it's not speculative or imaginative or driven by bare fear. You saw something that in those circumstances appeared to be a weapon, and you responded to that. That's a reasoned response. You didn't just say, well, for all I know, this guy could have something in his hand, and you shot him. You saw something in his hand.
So for every argument of that, what happened is that he was executed and all this. First of all, he wasn't executed. That's not fair to say, obviously, because that's not what happened. You could say it was an accident. You could say it was accidental discharge, whatever. But to say it was an execution is, that's disingenuous to say that. However, at the same time, the people that are arguing that it is an execution are the same people that think that it's okay to fight law enforcement, get involved in law enforcement while they're doing their duties. Basically effing with a cop or effing with a federal agent while they're doing their job. So resisting arrest now seems to be okay and sort of like a common theme now. There's video after video of people who resist arrest and they end up getting shot. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, the cop's the bad guy. Well, don't resist arrest. And every law enforcement officer and every lawyer will tell you, don't screw with cops. Just stay on the sidelines. If you want to protest, go ahead and protest. But if you're going to start getting into a physical altercation with a police officer or a federal agent, you are putting yourself in that position on your own. That's your own fault. So
that is reasonable. I do think this is the decisive moment, though, for Alex Preddy. When he went hands-on with that ICE agent right here in the thumbnail, that changed everything for him. If he had only done that was the moment that the snowball was rolled off the cliff and became an avalanche. Everything that followed could have prevented if he'd simply not done that, not touched that ICE agent. Because the moment he does that, now he's committed a federal felony, good for 8 years in prison, impeding a federal law enforcement officer.
Yeah, at that moment in time, he had already he could have been arrested for a felony at that point by impeding a federal officer. So he had already committed a felony.
In their course of their duties by contact. Now he has to be arrested. Now all the other ICE officers, or CBP, more accurately, are going to swarm in, as they did. And with that kind of scrum, where everybody is armed, Alex Preddy is armed. Of course, every officer is armed. Everybody's struggling, wrestling. Alex Preddy is not complying with lawful arrest. He's fighting lawful arrest after having committed an 8-year felony. And I know the people on the left like to say, well, it was just an 8-year felony. I mean, impeding a federal law enforcement officer by contact, we don't execute people for that. That's not the legal punishment for that offense. At worst, it's 8 years. I mean, what's the prison sentence for me taking a bath with a plugged-in toaster? There's no prison sentence for that. But should I expect anything other than my own demise? It's like someone who stumbles out of a bar, drunk, off his butt, gets in a sports car, starts racing down a curvy road at high speeds in an ice storm, and then he loses control of the car and crashes and dies. The penalty for reckless drunk driving is not execution. Of course it's not, but that's not the question. The question is, what other outcome would you expect?
There you go.
There were only two outcomes here.
Well said. It's not execution. It's what did you expect to happen while screwing with cops when you had a gun on you? It's a very common, and this is that common sense is no longer common in America anymore, or anywhere for that matter. But especially here, it's really sad that it's just a blatant common sense situation, and people want to somehow twist it into something and call it an execution. But this guy just said it perfectly. What did you expect to happen?
The officers were going to secure his arrest, or the fight was going to continue and continue to escalate. And when he leans up, brings it.
And by the way, if you're such a smart guy, if you're like this amazing dude, if you have a concealed weapons permit, which apparently he didn't have on him, but if you're somebody who has a permit to carry a firearm, wouldn't you think that that individual was slightly more intelligent than the average person, especially ones who don't carry firearms, that you don't bring a firearm to a protest where you would get involved in an altercation with a cop or a federal agent? Don't you think? And by the way, everybody that says that federal agents, the ICE agents, aren't police or anything like that, they're law enforcement agency on the federal level, so you can't say that they're not. They're law enforcement like any other law enforcement. But don't you think that you would be smart enough to not get into an altercation with someone if you're carrying a firearm at a protest? If you want to bring a firearm to a protest, I'm all for that. But I certainly wouldn't try to be getting into fights with cops when I had one.
His hand around from the back of his body, from where his holster had been, from which the gun had, of course, been secured by then, by gray jacket guy. But not every officer knows everything. These officers' brains aren't ethernetted together. Every officer has...
Yeah, apparently there is news. I don't know. I haven't confirmed it or not, but he had gotten into an altercation with other federal agents, like FBI potentially. I'll have to look into this. But apparently he was known by FBI to be an agitator before. I don't have that confirmed. I'm looking into that. But wouldn't that be interesting?
Different perspective of what's going on. And even when they're looking at a scene, every officer's not seeing the same things. The eye focuses on this detail or that detail. I'm sure we've all seen this, right? Count how many times the player's wearing white past a basketball. So what are you looking for? You're looking for white and you're looking for a basketball. And you have to be focused because you have to count, right? So it's an ongoing demand on your attention. And here they are. You can't look at the black. Don't look at the people in black. You're only looking at the people in white. That's what you're counting. That's what's getting your attention. And and you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And of course, if you've seen this before, you know what's happening now. But if this is the first time you've seen it, I'm going to spoil it for you. A man in a gorilla outfit just walked through the middle of that picture, and most people don't see it. Most people don't see it. And that happens in any kind of...
Anybody remember that, where the people are passing the basketball and you only concentrate on the people wearing the white shirt and a gorilla walks through? It's pretty remarkable. And then once again, that's where people are starting to say, oh, well, you know, it was an execution, it was this, it was that. You're not an expert. You don't know the law. I mean, I didn't make any sort of judgment until I listened to what these guys have. I watched it myself, and then these are the experts. This is the attorney who knows this way better than anybody else. The court system that he understands, and federal agents that know how the law works and how all this stuff happens. And by the way, I mean, if any of you have been in a gunfight with people, then maybe you might have some, and you're not an agent or an attorney, and then maybe you have some room to talk. But other than that, you have no room to talk. You can't be an armchair quarterback on this. These are the experts. This guy's an expert. And you're going to sit there and tell him he's wrong, but yet he's on the Supreme Court bar, and you're saying he's wrong. This guy's wrong. that in and of itself is nuts.
Intense observation demand, particularly being in a fight where you know there's a gun involved because you heard the shouts of gun, gun, gun by your fellow officers. The way our brain captures and stores and recalls and processes information under stress is completely different than how it does it in normal, unpressured day-to-day life. For many years, I taught live classes, live law of self-defense classes, day-long classes around the country. And I would often bring with me a shooting simulator system. It was in a giant Pelican case. We'd set it up. And basically how it worked was it would project on a screen an image of a threatening character. And you had an infrared pistol. And when you fired at the screen, the system would record where your shots were, how many, where they hit, and so forth. And we used it as a training exercise because it wasn't always obvious immediately what the nature of the threat was. So these students would sit through a whole day of me teaching them this.
Jeb comment, Pretty literally had a rib broken in a confrontation with ICE a week prior. If you have a link to that, can you, or tell me what news organization, because I haven't been able to find it anywhere. But send that link to me. I would like to try and find out if any of that stuff is true.
And then we'd put them in this system. Now, obviously, it's all fake. You can't get hurt, right? But just observing the students, it was obvious that their pulse rate was up. Their breathing rate would go up. Their hands would shake. Their hands would shake just from the artificial pressure of the system. And they would have to solve the problem, maybe by shooting, maybe by not shooting. We would urge them to use verbal commands. And they all knew ahead of time that when this 1-minute video was done, they would have to turn to the class, turn their back to the screen, and describe to the rest of us what they saw, what they did, and why they did it. What was their legal rationale for their decisions and their actions? They couldn't remember anything.
You saying Benny Johnson has it?
Everything the media told you about Alex Peretti.
Let me see if I can find it. I can play that next. Oh, by the way, MSNBC, did anybody see that MSNBC, what's up, Mr. Mikey, used an AI photo to clean up Peretti? So they actually changed the photo of him to make him look more attractive. It's unbelievable.
Couldn't remember the color of the guy's shirt. Were there people in the background? Did someone walk into the scene? They could not remember how many shots they fired. We had one guy actually drop the fake magazine out of the fake gun to the ground. He accidentally hit the magazine eject button and picked it up, shoved it back into the guns backwards. So the front of the magazine to the rear of the pistol, shoved it in so hard we needed tools to remove it afterwards. And yet when we asked him at the end of his video about that, he said, "What are you talking about? That never happened." It never happened. So you have to understand that too. When we're analyzing these videos frame by frame by frame, millisecond by millisecond, that's not how this is experienced by anybody involved in the confrontation. Nobody is engaged in that kind of deliberate decision making. So this to me is like with a chemical reaction, for example, you need a certain threshold energy level that needs to be reached, and then the reaction takes off. This was it. The moment he decided to go hands-on, he effectively killed himself. He placed himself in the position of being in a bathtub and holding a plugged-in toaster above himself. He put himself in the position of being the guy who walks drunk out of the bar, gets in his sports car, and races down icy, curvy roads at 150 miles an hour.
So there you go. Coming from a lawyer who would know better than anybody in the chat, this is what he does for a living, and it gets into probably the most Well, it is. The highest court in the land's bar association just said that this guy put himself in the situation to get himself hurt or killed because of getting into an altercation with a weapon with a federal agent. There you have it. And that should be the end of it. But it's not, because it's an ideological thing. It's a paid thing to say, oh no, that's not true. I mean, it is. I mean, he's saying it. He's the top lawyer when it comes to self-defense and the top lawyer when it comes to SCOTUS. I mean, he's a SCOTUS attorney.
Is the legal punishment for that death? No. Is the legal punishment for what Alex Preddy did execution? No. Should anybody be surprised that these were the outcomes, including Alex Preddy? No. This is what happens when you fight armed men. People die. And those armed men were acting within the bounds of the law. Alex Preddy was not. Now remember, the Insurrection Act is enormously broad and discretionary to the president. This is it in statutory form. Whenever, I mean, that's how it starts. Whenever the president considers, he just has to consider it. No analysis. Whenever the president considers that unlawful obstructions, combinations or assemblages or rebellion against the authority of the United States make it impractical to enforce the laws of the U.S. of any state by the ordinary course of judicial proceedings, he may call into federal service such of the militia of any state and use such of the armed forces as he considers necessary to enforce those laws to suppress the rebellion. I'm completely out of time, so I'm just going to hit this real quick. Donald Trump, Truth Social. This is why I'm hereby calling on Governor Walz, Mayor Frey, and every Democrat governor and mayor in the United States to formally cooperate with the Trump administration to enforce our nation's laws rather than resist and stoke the flames of division, chaos, and violence. 1. Governor Walz and Mayor Frey should turn over all criminal illegal aliens that are currently incarcerated in their state prisons and jails to federal authorities, along with all illegal criminals with an active warrant or known criminal history for immediate deportation. State and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens arrested by local police. 3, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes. 4, Democrat politicians must partner with the federal government to protect American citizens in the rapid removal of all criminal illegal aliens in our country. Some Democrats in places like Memphis, Tennessee, or Washington, D.C. have done so, resulting in safer streets for all. In addition, I'm hereby...
By the way, crime rates are down significantly in states where local law enforcement or state law enforcement and other local law enforcement assist ICE. So, there's more proof that working with ICE and not working against them makes communities safer.
Calling on the United States Congress to immediately pass legislation to end sanctuary cities, which is the root cause of all these problems. American cities should be safe sanctuaries for law-abiding American citizens only, not illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws. All of these requests are rooted in common sense and will provide the best possible circumstances to make America great again. The Trump administration is standing by and waiting for any Democrat to do the right thing and work with us on these important matters of Make America Safe, like it is in all sections of our country where we are together with local leadership participating in involvement. He didn't include, thanks for your attention to this matter, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Insurrection Act in 3, 2, 1. JB Trevor, $10. In previous show, you mentioned harboring aliens put you at risk of liability for what they do. Does that include employers who feed them, like agriculture, and other people who sponsor alien minors? I mean, if they're doing it unlawfully, right, they need to be illegally in America. But yeah, harboring is a very broad term, right? Food, shelter, clothing, medical care, providing the resources to acquire those things like money. That's all harboring. And to be clear, you're not actually responsible for exactly what they do. It's just that the penalty for harboring changes depending on the outcome of the harboring. If nothing especially bad happens, it's 5 years in prison for you, the harborer. If they go out and kill somebody, or somebody dies as a consequence of the harboring, then the penalty for you changes. It goes up to life in prison or execution. But if they go out and rob a bank, you're not responsible for their bank robbery.
There you go. You need to be careful if you harbor somebody illegal. All right, let's take a look. This is a CNN article. Okay. And the reason I'm using CNN in this particular case is they're saying that he had broken a rib in a confrontation with federal agents a week before. I've not read this yet. So let's see what they have to say. So keep in mind, it's coming from CNN, not like Breitbart or Fox News or anything where people could say, oh, well, they're liars. Federal immigration officers have been collecting personal information about protesters and agitators in Minneapolis, sources told CNN, and had documented details about Alex Preddy before he was shot to death on Saturday. It is unclear how Preddy first came to the attention of federal authorities, but sources told CNN that about a week before his death, he suffered a broken rib when a group of federal officers tackled him while he was protesting their attempt to detain other individuals. In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security said that DHS law enforcement has no record of this incident. A memo sent earlier this month to agents temporarily assigned to the city asked them to capture all images, license plates, identifications, and general information on hotels, agitators, protesters, etc., so we can capture it all in one consolidated form. According to the correspondence reviewed by CNN, Preddy's previous encounter is another reflection of aggressive approach federal agents are taking with observers and protesters, a philosophy underscored by the request for agents to collect information about protesters whose activities are broadly protected by the First Amendment, not beating up federal officers. DHS has repeatedly warned of threats against law enforcement officers during immigration enforcement operations and criticized protesters who they argue are impeding those operations. On Tuesday, the department also publicized an online tip form to share information about people allegedly harassing ICE officers. The earlier incident started when he stopped his car after observing ICE agents chasing what he described as a family on foot and began shouting and blowing his whistle, according to a source who asked not to be named, out of fear of retribution. Preddy later told the source that 5 agents tackled him and one leaned on his back, an encounter that left him with a broken rib. The agents quickly released him at the scene. So that day he said he thought he was going to die. Preddy was later given medication consistent with treating a broken rib, according to records reviewed by CNN. So apparently he got into an altercation. I don't know if this is absolutely true or not, but reported by CNN. Let's see what Benny Johnson has to say about it, because he's saying the media is lying about Alex Preddy. Let's see what he says.
Everything the media has told you about Alex Preddy is a lie, including what he looks like. This is Alex Preddy, who brought a loaded Sig Sauer P320 to a physical altercation with federal officers this week. He resisted arrest and fought those officers and lost his life. Now, every American life lost is a tragedy, whether it's gunfire or fentanyl. But what's also a tragedy is when the media lies about these deaths in order to manipulate us, and that is precisely what they are doing with Alex Preddy. They have manipulated his actual photo into this. This is an AI-generated fake person that the media is telling you lost his life tragically in Minneapolis this week. Watch.
The nonviolent bystander by ICE agents in Minneapolis. This time it was 37-year-old Alex Preddy.
That's not a real person. This is an MSNBC broadcast that was seen by millions of people. I can't believe that they did this. They actually changed the image in order to try and create further sympathy, primarily among their female audience. They know this. It's psychological warfare. MSNBC is disgusting for doing this. Imagine if you die for your cause and then somebody at MSNBC decides you're too ugly to be a martyr. We see you, MSNBC. We know what you're doing. You did the exact same thing to Joe Rogan. Just a reminder, Joe Rogan didn't look sick enough in his COVID video, and Alex Preddy wasn't Preddy enough. They're also not telling the full story about who Alex Preddy was. They want you to think that he's simply an innocent nurse who was caught in the crossfire, but that's not true. He was actually a professional agitator who was hunting down ICE agents and actually had broken a rib in a confrontation with federal agents a week before. Alex Preddy spent his time hunting down ICE agents. Listen to this.
In this earlier incident, he stopped his car after observing ICE agents chasing what he described as a family on foot and began shouting and blowing his whistle. Preddy later told one of these sources that 5 agents tackled him and one leaned on his back, appearing to leave him with a broken rib.
So if you're doing this, you're not an innocent bystander. Alex Preddy was a soldier, not a civilian. Civilians don't break a rib at a physical confrontation with police and then show up and do it again the next week armed. This was somebody who was a paid left-wing agitator.
And that's a great point. You're showing up again a second time with a weapon. So if you had already gotten into an altercation with agents prior to, then you show up again with a firearm and you get into an altercation with the federal agents. What does that say about him?
And activist, somebody who was working in a coordinated fashion to try and disrupt federal officers and was known to federal officers for physical confrontations. It's still a tragedy, but you need to hear the full story. This is who Alex Preddy actually was.
So more's coming out, and apparently there was an article that I read where his parents had said, you know, if you're going to go out there, you need to absolutely be careful and not do anything stupid. And here you go. Here you have a situation where he, once again, already got into an altercation and decided he was going to get into an altercation again and put himself into a very dangerous situation. And we just listened to a SCOTUS attorney tell you beyond any reasonable doubt that it was clean 100%. And that is that. One more reminder, if you are here and you like this content and you want to watch more of it, be sure to subscribe. At the very least, subscribe. That way you are notified when I go live again, which is typically 2 p.m. Eastern. Let's see, what else do we have? Let me play one more deal here, and then we'll call it a day.
Raids and the anti-ICE protest. Don't be engulfed by the smokescreen of the ongoing ICE raids and the anti-ICE protests.
This is not just about resistance here in Minneapolis. It's about love. So you've got people uniting and coming together in this beautiful way.
After the shooting of Renee Good, the coverage of ICE on CBS, NBC, and ABC was 93% negative. 93% negative is not journalism, it's tribalism.
Let's keep our eye on the ball.
How high up do you think the message went that there was fraud? Do you think it made its way to the governor's office?
I struggle to believe it didn't. I have to believe that the governor's office and Keith Ellison's office were aware of this. They've said they were involved in helping the FBI. They've said they were made aware.
Mr. Dexter, could have something been done about this earlier?
Yes. As I stated in my opening testimony, in the years that I worked there, we identified how fraud was occurring, the loopholes that existed, and we.
What were some of the warning signs, Mr. Dexter?
Well, the fact that part of our job was to go and collect attendance records. We would find attendance records that were either incomplete, non-existent.
But I can't understate it, how frustrated Minnesotans are right now with the level of fraud and the lack of accountability. Assistant Commissioner Moore said that through the SWIFT system, through your accounting system, you know who you're paying. You know the people who you are sending money to. You know their name, you know their business. Frankly, you probably know who they're connected to. And through the tools across state agencies, and across all of the executive branch, from business registrations to what they have to file with the Attorney General's office, all of those tools exist. So why are payments continuing to people who have been convicted of fraud?
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey's inner circle has been riddled with explosive ties to one of the biggest fraud heists in American history, the $250 million Feeding Our Future scam.
A brazen scheme of staggering proportions.
The largest pandemic fraud in the United States.
The subjects in this case weren't interested in feeding our future. They were interested in feeding their own gluttony.
We have new details on a jury tampering scheme at the center of a major fraud case. Federal prosecutors indicted 5 people for their roles in offering a juror $120,000 for a not guilty verdict in the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. The U.S. attorney says the group targeted juror 52 because she was the youngest juror and appeared to be the only juror of color.
3 of Frey's own appointees got nailed. Former senior policy aide Abdi Nur Salah pleaded guilty to wire fraud. Shamarke Issa, twice handpicked to chair the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, copped to wire fraud and restitution in the millions. Abdik Kadir Ainanche Mohammed, tapped for Frey's Community Safety Work Group, faced indictments in the same rotten scheme. Add in campaign max donations from at least 8 indicted players, plus Frey's own wife, Sarah Clark, lobbying at the firm that shielded Feeding Our Future itself, and you've got a tangled web of proximity, appointments, and unanswered questions screaming conflict and cover.
Look, the fraud's real. We've all got to acknowledge it. The fraud is very real. And by the way, when somebody commits fraud, and there are many that have done that, you investigate it, you charge, you prosecute, and you put the person in jail. As an individual, you put the person in jail as an individual. You do not hold an entire community, any community, accountable for the actions of individuals.
Well, somebody just said in the chat, see the names of these crooks. So what, now you can't overgeneralize? But yeah, I think Frey is definitely a crook. He's in on all this. We did the poll earlier. I believe most people, close to 80%, believe that he's in on it. Then maybe even potentially Walls is in on it as well. And people need to be held accountable, period. And the people that are causing the violence need to be held accountable. The people who cause the fraud need to be held accountable. But unfortunately, if that doesn't happen, this will continue on, and you will have these people who will continue to egg it on and support it and even benefit from it. There's a lot of these people that are benefiting from it. That's why they're so violent. That's why there is this violence. I mean, when you think about it, nobody will admit guilt. Nobody admits guilt when they're accused of committing a crime. And then when they're found out about it, or people find out about the crimes, what do? They violently respond. They attack. They support. Nothing's wrong. Everything's okay. You're racist, this and that. So they throw out all this stuff in order to try and defend themselves from being arrested and held accountable for the crimes they've committed. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully things will get better and Donald Trump will finally send in the military in order to deal with this stuff. But all right, I'm going to call it a day. And I appreciate all of you being in here. 623, thank you. Peter. Fish. D. George. Too many of you to mention, but I appreciate all of you that are in here. Be sure to subscribe. At the very least, like I said, but also become a member. There should be a join button. If you click the 3, well, actually, no, I put in the chat. It's pinned in the chat. There's a link there for you to subscribe or to become a member for 99 cents. Your chats will take precedence. And on top of that, Yeah, exactly. You catch people in a lie. That's what happens. They start getting violent. That's exactly right. So, and that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing a violence, knee-jerk reaction to them getting found out. And they know that they're guilty. So then what they do is they lash out violently. So yeah, become a member, 99 cents, and I will do a live stream for members only on the weekend. So that's extra content that you get, and then also a badge in the chat. And it's only 99 cents, guys. All right, thanks again. We will see you tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for dropping in, and have a great rest of your day.